Did you know that today we're managing 10 times more contacts and information than we were 5 years ago? Yet the tools we use to manage them remain the same. We're here to change that with a simpler, smarter, and more comprehensive way to find and manage your contacts and communications. The best part is that we do this for you automatically. By analyzing the data in your phone, email, and online networks, Smartr builds complete profiles with contact info, social updates, message history, and common contacts for every single person you've ever communicated with, and it makes finding the people you know effortless. This is the smartest contact manager you'll ever use, and now it can be accessed from your iPhone. From the home screen, you can quickly browse Facebook and Twitter updates from your top contacts. Smartr makes it easier than ever to find people. If you don't know their first or last name, search by company or even by business title. Smartr ranks all the results by importance, so the people you talk to most are at the top. Open up a profile and you've got all the info you need. Contact information is always up to date and reliable. You can even access your recent messages and appointment history. So let's say you're looking for that one guy you met in a meeting with Jeff, but you can't remember his name. Click the Common Contacts tab where you'll find all the people you have in common. Smartr also gives you quick access to each contact's Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn profiles. Just tap to view the full profile. And when you upgrade to Xobni Pro, you can access all your Smartr and Xobni contacts across iPhone, Gmail, Android, Outlook, and BlackBerry. This will create a single unified address book across all of your devices. Visit Xobni.com/iPhone to get Smartr contacts for your iPhone today.
Hello everybody, welcome to Untether.tv. I'm your host, Rob Woodbridge. This is that place you come to pretty much every single day to find out who, what, where, when is going on in this mobile industry. Not only that, deeper dive, an understanding of what exactly some of these guys who are paving the way, these companies, these individuals, these entrepreneurs, these investors, what they're doing, paving the way in the mobile industry as this industry is kind of figuring out its footing. It's a pretty incredible time to be a part of it. I love meeting people who are actually inventing as we're building the platform. So, you know, this is a great treat for me simply because about 2 years ago, in March of 2010, I sat down with a company that has been one of my hero companies for a long time. The company's name is Xobni. And for those of you who don't understand what Xobni is, it's inbox backwards. But it's really about a paradigm shift in the way that you manage contacts. And by manage, I think the only term I can think about is contextualize contacts. And we're going to get into this because it's so important. The way that we think about contacts is shifting because of the mobile industry, because of mobile devices, because of context. And we're going to dive into this. But we're going to get a little bit of background, a little bit about what Xobni's going on. The fact that they're launching, and by the time you watch this, have launched their iPhone application, which is incredible. And the fact that they've got the BlackBerry version, an Android version, Gmail version, and Outlook version of this as well. So we're gonna dive right into this. Who I've got here is Michael Albers, who is the VP Product Management at Xobni from San Francisco, frosty San Francisco. And I say that with a smile on my face. Michael, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me, Rob.
Well, welcome. I'm really happy to have you. I sat with Michael Holzer a couple of years ago to talk about the BlackBerry launch at the time and the trials and tribulations that Xobni went through in launching on the BlackBerry platform. Yep. Now, 2 years later, we're going to talk about the same thing around the iPhone launch. But I'm really interested in just giving a quick review of what Xobni is. So for people who have never heard of you guys, which I find incredible, if you've never heard of Xobni. But for those people who have not heard of Xobni, why don't you give us a little bit of background, Michael?
Absolutely. So actually, Xobni's been around for quite some time, and as you also mentioned, the name Xobni is actually inbox spelled backwards, and that's roughly where we started. We had an Outlook plugin called Xobni for Outlook, and essentially what our Outlook plugin did is it analyzed all of your email communication. It looked at who you talked to, it looked at the patterns, it recognized all of your contacts, and simply by communicating with people over email, from that, we created these very rich profiles. So once we had that, we actually then realized that the real power for having all these profiles and all this automatic communication with you is by moving it to a mobile phone. And that's where you, 2 years ago, actually saw our launch of our BlackBerry client. And so what we made possible there is moving essentially all the contacts that Xobni discovered in your inbox and making them available on your BlackBerry. And at the same time, also then looking at all of the communication you had in your BlackBerry and making them back available to your Outlook plugin. And so what we've done over the last several years is actually been building out our backend. We now call the Smartr Cloud to take advantage of both mobile data as well as the desktop data that we have available, really in the end to build very, very, very robust profiles of everybody who you talk to, anybody you communicate with, and any history you might have had with those people.
Yeah, if you're like me, you guys listening and watching, I'm sure, Michael, you're the same way. I have thousands of contacts in LinkedIn. I have 10,000 contacts in my various contact managers spread out across multiple devices and desktops, and then I have my social, my social connections, whether that's through LinkedIn, as I said, or Facebook or Twitter, and I think I'm checking 15 different services for social social context around my contacts. And really, when I knew Xobni, and I've been a long time user of the product in Outlook and then on my BlackBerry, but when I used it, it was really about making sure that I didn't lose any email. The indexing and the fast search were incredible. But you guys kind of you're morphing into this reinvention of the contact, aren't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I can actually elaborate on that a little bit as well. So this has actually been a huge pain point for many of our users and just users in general, right? As you pointed out, you have contacts all over the place. You have them in your social networks, you have contacts in email, you have contacts in Outlook, you have them on your phone. Some are maintained, some you barely remember why you actually talked to the person. So what we're doing is we're actually taking the pain out of all of that management and doing it for you in an automatic way.
And that's what I love about this is that it's kind of the power of mobile. And we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about kind of a little bit of forward thinking about how the contact needs to be reinvented. But I like a little bit more of the background piece here, and it's all around the iPhone. So I sat down with Michael Holzer a couple of years ago. We talked about the launch of the BlackBerry application. And since then, you guys have been very busy in migrating, as you said, your cloud and into mobile. But the iPhone has always been kind of a missing piece to your arsenal.
Absolutely.
And the Mac Mail. I'm just going to put that out there. But
sure.
The iPhone, why has it taken so long for the iPhone to come to the forefront for Xobni?
Sure, absolutely. Well, first and foremost, but before we wanted to build further products on top of our back end, we really needed to make sure the back end itself was robust and really provided and focused on quality of your contacts. And so after we launched our BlackBerry product, we actually spent a significant amount of time making sure that the Smartr Cloud or the Xobni Cloud was solid, right, and really produced the results that we expected from it, right? Both the BlackBerry client as well as the Outlook client actually did a fair amount of analysis. There were a lot of smarts in these clients. They were very robust, did a lot of analysis. And we really wanted to actually move all of that into our cloud. And so what we then focused on is essentially taking the brains of these two products and moving them into the back end and making sure that it knew how to handle all of this stuff. Now, once you have that, of course, now the possibilities are endless. And so we spent a lot of time making sure that it's connected to your Google Contacts. It was able to handle things like Gmail. It's able to connect to Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and make sure that we pull all that in versus all that kind of coming into the clients. And so we spend a fair amount of time making sure all that plumbing essentially was in place, that the thing was robust and scalable and everything worked to that extent. And so that's where we spent a lot of time. And to kind of prove the concept of making sure that everything worked well, we actually focused then on building a browser plugin, right? What's lighter than a browser plugin? So that's when we launched our Gmail product. So we have Xobni for Gmail or Smartr Inbox for Gmail that essentially takes advantage of the cloud. It's a very light plugin, but it talks directly to the cloud. It does all the interaction with our cloud, but it makes everything available right inside of your Gmail inbox.
So when I guess it makes sense to focus on doing this, like making it right instead of having it localized. You're putting this in the cloud. It makes a lot of sense. But a lot of competitors kind of walked into this space, and certainly there's a lot of companies now looking at this social context. In fact, some of the companies. I mean, Xobni was one of the early companies that the BlackBerry Fund invested in, but Gist is another company that kind of takes this and adds a little bit more context, and they were purchased by RIM
That's correct.
about a year ago, I think. So when you're sitting back, Michael, and you're watching, you're doing the right thing. You're retooling so that you can grow the platform instead of having, going down the path and 3 years from now realizing you have to start from scratch at that point when you've got a good install base. But when you're sitting back and you're building that platform over the last, year or so, what are you thinking when all these other competitors start moving into this space and you guys are by far the leaders? You were one of the first companies that I saw that offered this kind of great service, but now you're kind of trying to reemerge and say, hey, no, we're still here.
Yep. Well, I think we felt like we regardless had to get it right, and I know there's a lot of companies out there that have tried similar things and are doing similar things. We know it's actually not very easy to do and build out a robust solution. And so I think it was time well spent to make sure that everything was solid, everything was robust, and we provided the quality that our users are expecting, but really knowing that down the road, launching new products and on new platforms would make it that much easier. And so, as I mentioned, Gmail was kind of our litmus test of showing how that would be possible. We shortly followed with our Android client, and now we're here with our iPhone client. And so, although it might have seemed we're somewhat silent, we're working very diligently to make sure that once we have this in place, we can launch all these new platforms very quickly. And so, I think that was the right thing to do for us. And yeah, it's not trivial. It's rather complicated to build an easy-to-use, solid application that's robust and that our users come to expect from us. Right?
Well, and you've got to. I mean, I completely agree with the process that you went through. I mean, you have to do this, and my feeling is that you guys are so far from where Xobni started at because of mobile, right? That as you said, you had this awakening where it was, contacts and in context on a mobile device are very different from what it is on a desktop. So, I mean, do you feel like you guys are different from, the vision is different from the time that you started so many years ago?
Oh, absolutely. I think the company has fundamentally transformed, right? I mean, we were at the core, very much an Outlook plugin, standalone client. You ran a setup and executable, and that was it, right? Having a back-end platform now that does some of the things that we used to do in the Outlook client, and of course, much more than that, not only makes building new products much easier, but it allows us to do many other things, right? If we wanted to, say, integrate in a desktop phone, for example, we can now make that happen, right? And so it's important to build a very robust platform, which we didn't have before, to then start developing new features, new products, new functionality on top of, and take advantage of that.
All right, so you go into this development phase, and then you decide on iPhone. Was iPhone always part of the vision for you guys? I mean, it's a stupid question because it has to be, but but I mean, how long have you been working on the iPhone client? And start with that. How long have you been working there?
Sure. So we actually announced that we were going to launch an iPhone client sometime last year. It was always part of the puzzle, right? I mean, clearly with the mobile marketplace, I mean, Android, iPhone, and of course many other mobile phones as well. iPhone inevitably was going to be part of that.
Can I ask you a question there?
Sure.
I know that we're experiencing a lag between us. You'll notice the video coming in and out, the quality coming in and out. So just bear with us. The conversation is what's important, not our pretty faces, right? But so when you're trying to make a decision about what platforms to go first, I think that you guys did the exact opposite of what everybody else was doing, right? You went BlackBerry as your first mobile device. Because BlackBerry 2 years ago was in a different situation, right? We know that. But then you chose Android ahead of iOS. What was the rhyme and reason for going BlackBerry, Android, iOS, as opposed to what everybody else seems to be doing, which is iOS, Android, and BlackBerry?
Yep. Yeah. Well, part of it is to start taking advantage of some of the things that we could take advantage of on the Android phone. Also, it was initially somewhat easier for us to develop on that platform. There's a lot of things that we actually built as part of the Gmail initiative that we could take advantage of. And so we utilized some of that, first and foremost. Okay. Android was certainly gaining market share as well. And I think we also had the biggest opportunity to have an impact on a contact solution that would make sense for the Android platform. So that's why we chose that. Now, both these were happening in parallel as well. I think for the iPhone users, the biggest thing for us was to try to build something that was high quality, that was simple, and also had a nice look to it. And so to some degree, we learned a lot from Android and carried a lot of that over back to the iPhone. And so really, we wanted to make sure that the iPhone was, was a great product that we would deliver to our users. And so I think it made utmost sense for us to kind of follow that order, actually.
Now, from a user standpoint, was the adoption on the Android platform higher than the BlackBerry platform? I mean, was there a clear leader in that for you guys?
Actually, it's fairly comparable, actually. Okay. So we've seen tremendous traction with our BlackBerry product as well as our Android product. Yeah. And they've both been received very well. I think on the BlackBerry product, we had an additional benefit of really, really tight integration in the phone itself. So we were able to take advantage of plugging ourselves into the native Compose window. And that's something that obviously we'd still desire on both Android and iPhone and working towards, but that's somewhat hard to do. Yes. We've really solved a fundamental use case, which is make my Xobni contacts or Smartr Contacts available to me when I'm about to send an email. And so I think we saw a lot of pickup purely on that integration.
Yeah, the integration on the BlackBerry side was phenomenal. I mean, it was just, and it allows you to do that. I mean, I think you've gone from that kind of environment to Android, which may allow you to do that a little bit deeper because what you've done with Gmail. But then you're going to an iOS platform, which is siloed, which they don't like you interacting with their email clients or calendaring clients. So how do you? There's obviously some fundamental differences between the product, but you've obviously built in the capability here to have the same seamless experience, but Absolutely. Without really tying into the email client.
Yep. Yeah, and those are things that we've done. So obviously on iOS, it is somewhat siloed, right? The app is fairly standalone and not able to interact with some of the native programs that you would expect otherwise, and like we did on BlackBerry. However, this is again where our Smartr Cloud comes back into play, right? Which is you don't actually now need the app to go interact with the OS at a level to go discover this information. The backend actually takes care of that. And so the client's job essentially is to gather as much detail from you from the application itself and then push that back to our backend. But it also facilitates a setup flow such as finding your Gmail information, other mail accounts, learning about your social networks, and it actually takes care of that all in the background. So next time you launch your app, all that just comes back in, right? And so by having our Smartr Cloud allowed us to do things that we're limited with otherwise. Right?
So, and obviously that's the reason, right, to use the cloud is that, you have, why do all the processing on a device like this, even if it becomes quad core, you're still talking about battery consumption and bandwidth consumption and time, right? Processing is never going to be fast, especially when you've got unlimited computing power in the cloud, and then all you have to do is send down the outcome or the output to the device. That's the brainwave everybody's having certainly right now about cloud computing, is that put all the smarts up there and then bring it down to the terminal. And obviously that's the way you're thinking about this as well.
And actually that's a big lesson we learned both with our Outlook product as well as our BlackBerry client. The BlackBerry mobile client was fairly intensive, right? It did actually a lot of processing locally. It did a lot of aggregation of information. And we no longer need to do that, right? The backend takes care of that. And so then it allows you to build these very lightweight clients, right? They have a small footprint. You can now manage, how often and how frequently it receives an update, so you minimize the amount of data coming across, right? These days, people are on a 2 gigabyte plan. They're limited. The last thing you want is a single app to literally blow you through your data plan. And so we have to be careful about those things. And so by having these things, the broader data set stored in the back end, you can take these bits of information in piecemeal and still provide a great experience to the user. Right?
All right, so you've been building the iPhone application since sometime last year. You know, you've been able to sign up for a advance or for notification on the website. Any challenges? When I talked to Mike Holzer about the BlackBerry application, lots of challenges, lots of development time. I think it took maybe 9 or 10 months to go through it with a couple of restarts.
Sure.
Was there anything? And you know, when I talk to developers of other applications, just in general, they kind of rate that the iOS development environment is top notch. Android falls into the second, and then RIM, in terms of a development platform, at the time, not as easy to use. And I'm being political. I'm not being political here. I'm actually, kind of smoothing over that, because they say that, they describe it in many other words. But was that your experience, right, with the iOS version?
Absolutely. I think pretty much the same discovery. The sets of tools available to you and the environments that Apple provides you are tremendous, right? Yeah. At the same time, right, they also, to ensure that in the end your phone still continues to operate, do a lot of things on your behalf, right? So they look at how much memory you consume and how you do certain things, and certainly if an application doesn't cooperate or does something the OS doesn't expect, their only recourse is to shut down the application. Right. And so some of our trials and tribulations were around that, right? Simply, we didn't anticipate that performance would be impacted in certain cases, or we would just consume too much data or too much memory. And so there's a fair amount of fine-tuning that we have to do to make sure that the app was robust, and that, if you were to click into things, that it wouldn't get killed by the OS itself.
You don't want that.
Whereas the other environments might be a little bit more forgiving. But in the end, right, it really does ensure that you build a great quality application that users enjoy. And so we've learned a lot in that respect, and so that's great. On the piece, as far as some of the other trials and tribulations that we uncovered and while we're spent time in building the app, at the core, we're really building an automatic address book for you, right? We have our Smartr Contacts. They're robust. They're complete profiles. We find pictures and titles and information from all of the connected accounts that you might give us. So that was the easy part, actually, right? Making sure that you have all of your contacts available to you. You can search them. You can find all the email addresses and phone numbers that we might have discovered. The challenge for us is trying to figure out, how do we present this now to a user where it's engaging, right? Yes, I have a list of contacts. Well, that's not any different than what I have on my phone. Our big value add is we find many, many more contacts than you would otherwise. Literally everybody you've ever communicated with. And so one of the areas that we were struggling with, or to some degree really wanted to get right, is the initial experience, which is, how do I surface new contacts? How do I introduce discovery of contacts on an application, and how do I take advantage of that on the phone, right? Because the iPhone particularly is very media rich, right? You want nice pictures, you want things to show up correctly. And so we spent a fair amount of time trying to figure out what that would look like. And so where we settled on the application that we're launching is what we call a slide box to some degree. So when you first launch the application, you get a home screen. We show you the thousands of contacts we have uncovered from all your social networks. But now we have a nice slide box at the bottom that allows you to go see all of the Facebook pictures your friends might have posted or any other contact. We show you the contact that actually did the post, and so you can click into it and go, oh yeah, I remember Rob, that's right. How was your vacation, right? And it's a great way to introduce yourself again. And then we also post tweets, because we feel like that's also quite relevant. And we do some analysis on what's compelling and what's not compelling to show that to you. And so we spend a fair amount of time making sure that we felt we got that piece right.
So how much, when you break it down, I mean, development is implementation of great design, right? Yep. That's what it ends up being, is that you have to know your constraints of the platform that you're on, right? So you're building for Android, it's drastically different. Even the UI is drastically different than iOS, which is drastically different than BlackBerry as well.
Right.
So development and output is really just about implementing great UI. So how much of the time did you spend on that UI development, as you were talking about? How to put a wrapper around all these social interactions?
We spend a significant amount of time on the UI, right? I mean, I think that, especially for iPhone, we wanted to make something that looked good, that also felt seamless, right? And something that the user might recognize or feel like they've already interacted with. And so we actually took a close look at the native contact application and tried to mirror some of that look and feel, but at the same time introduce some new elements that that we found were unique. And so we spent a lot of time just fine-tuning and making sure, what should this look like? How should we interact with that, right? We don't want stuff to be buried too many levels deep. And doing that. And frankly, then, of course, there's always the big technical piece, right? Yeah. Which is, how do you do a robust search, right? So now that we have all this information, we want to make sure you can search on title, on company, on email, you can search on a phone number, et cetera, et cetera. And so those are things you just got to make sure work right. And so, all in all, in the end, all these things add up, and certainly you want to make sure you deliver a high-quality app. So, it's better to kind of take your time and make sure that we feel we deliver something that our users, again, expect from us.
I want to come back to the process in 1 second, because I got to ask you a question. You tweaked this when you said you wanted to make sure that the iOS application was beautiful, and I think that's a lot of people are working on that piece as well. Is that, listen, they've seen these studies came out that talked about the fact that the iPhone is one of the only devices that people have as close to love for a machine as possible, right? People seem to love their iPhones, and
right.
But so you guys as a developer, and you're going through this in your mind. You've built the BlackBerry version, you've built the Android version, you've built the Gmail version, the Outlook version. You've done all this work. Do you think that there's added pressure to create a beautiful app on an iPhone versus kind of an acceptable looking app on an Android or a BlackBerry device? Like, because I seem to get that a lot, is that we wanted to create the greatest experience we could on the iPhone, and it usually revolves around beauty and simplicity. But Android, it's like, okay, well, we did as best as we could, and BlackBerry, it's the same thing. Do you find that was that a challenge?
Yes and no. I mean, I think in the end it is a balance, right? And so first and foremost for us is make sure you have the data you need and make sure it's functional, right? And so we actually primarily focused on that, right? And then we did spend a fair amount of time just fine-tuning to make sure that users didn't think it was out of the ordinary, as I mentioned. I actually think our Android app looks pretty good as well. So
yeah. I'm not saying that it doesn't at all.
No worries. But again, we did the same thing, right? I think we do want to make sure, and in my opinion, Xobni is definitely known for building nice looking products that are engaging, compelling, but yet also functional. And so that is still tried and true to all of our products we're building. And so I think you very much see that in our Gmail plugin, our Android product as well. And we're continuing to iterate on those as well, right? We're continually refining them and seeing how we can carry some of that over. And we've taken a kind of a three-pronged approach as well, right? Where there are pieces that we found worked very well in Gmail that we carried back over to the iPhone, right. Pieces that we felt users reacted to favorably on the Android and carried that over. And I'm sure it's going to be the other way around as well, where our iPhone users will teach us things that we didn't think about in both the Android and Gmail products, and kind of feed off of each other that well. And I'm sure eventually they'll all converge to a great experience.
Exactly. Something. Yep. Now, when you're going through this process of design and iteration, I mean, how true to the product? How true is the product that you're releasing to the original vision? I mean, there must have been battles going on about how to lay out that information. Was it a challenge? I can't imagine. You've got so much information, and I used a product like Gist.
Yep.
But the challenge with it is that it wasn't intuitive enough, and it was such a pain to set up. And I love TA and what he's done with Gist, but man, it was too onerous to go through that whole process and then to keep with it. So there's that UI piece, that setup piece, and the interaction piece has to be just, and I mean this, just stupid simple, right? That I launch it and it works. So how I mean, was there a way a path that you guys went down that you ended up at this total dead end and you pulled back and said, we can't build this because it's too many clicks, too deep, too hard to find?
I mean, at times we certainly run into that, right? And a bit of it is it's divide and conquer, right? You come up with what we believe is the right approach, and as I mentioned, luckily we've learned a lot from the other products that we've launched, and so we try to adhere to some of that.
What would be a good example of something that you learned from the other products?
So the what we call the out-of-box flow, right? So the initial the Gmail product that we launched, we spent a lot of time refining that, which is when you first install it, what happens? How do I create an account? Now, how do I give you my social network credentials? How do I give my your Gmail information, etc. When we build an Android product, we try to mirror some of that and realize, wow, you're now in a mobile environment. It's just very different, right? Users, it's overwhelming to go through a number of screens, and so we try to simplify some of that. And so this is where we learned a lot from our Android product and immediately carried it over to iPhone. But even there's always refinement, right? And so so we definitely spend a lot of time on making sure the setup flow at least is robust and works well and simple enough for users to be able to go through to be able to sign up on our product. And I'm sure we're still learning, right? I'm sure when we launch, when the product's available and users are using it, we'll run into some issues there, which is, how do I add my other email accounts? Or, there might be snags that they run into, and we'll continually refine it to make sure that that it works well for them.
Now, the reason I harp on this, or I'm diving a little bit deeper into this, is because I talk with a lot of developers, and I spend a lot of time with companies that are looking at building product. And what they say to me is strategy, upfront thinking. Two things they say is like, we don't want to pay for that. And their view of application development, especially for the enterprise stuff, is like this much thinking, that much implementing, right? We're going to think about it this much, and then we're going to implement, and we're going to do cross-platform. We're going to build it on Android, BlackBerry, iOS, and Windows Phone, and they end up getting down that development cycle, and it just keeps on going. It's like you're 9-10 months in, and you haven't got a product because you haven't got a clear vision about that upfront thinking. And I always ask them to inverse that. Is that if you do this much thinking, if you spend 90% of your time thinking and 10% of your time implementing, you'll have a far greater product that actually is, people will want to use. And I'm wondering, is that how your approach was for this? Don't prove me wrong here, Michael.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, maybe not the 90-10, but there's a fair amount of thought that goes into the design. What are the goals that we're trying to achieve, right? What are we trying to present to the users? What does the setup experience look like? What is it we're trying to achieve with the product at the onset of it all? And then we're working towards that. And then we start developing that.
So what do you think, what was your goal? Like, do you remember what your goal was when you set out to build the iOS version?
Yep, absolutely. Really, first and foremost, is essentially making all of the Smartr Contacts available to you and making sure that you can have them on your phone, go through a setup experience that allows you to go and have us gather that information for you, and then build the automatic address book for you, and then making it easy to find all these people. But at the same time, not make it overwhelming. So one of the things that we do, of course, is because we analyze all of your communications, we uncover many, many more contacts that you might have on your phone. And so where you might have 150 contacts on your phone, on average, we can find somewhere around 4,000 contacts. Well, that sounds really overwhelming. Now imagine you throw that in an alphabetically sorted list and forget it, right? The whole thing breaks down. And so that's why we wanted to make sure we get that right. And so I think we very much achieved that by making all these contacts available for you, actually organizing them by who's most important to you, because we can actually detect, analyze all the contacts and organize them by rank, and then being able to search across them in a very easy manner. So literally, if I type Rob and you and I communicate most often, I literally hit R and you're top of my list, because we've determined that you and I are very closely related. And so those are the things we really, that we have to continue doing, right? We need to make sure all the contacts are available to you, make sure it's not overwhelming, make sure that, of course, they're complete, but then make it also easy to find somebody that you've communicated with, including somebody you might have talked to, 5, 6, 10 years ago, and still have them be available to you at your fingertips. And so I think we've achieved that for sure.
So flipping this into the marketing side, how do you sell this? Right? I'm not talking about what your revenue. I'm going to come to your revenue model. But how do you sell this? How do you convince somebody who's carrying one of these devices that this is something that they should use above and beyond, or in place of the contact management software that comes with these applications, the PIM stuff? Right.
Well, I think our fundamental pitch really to them is that we're giving you an automatic address book, right? You don't have to worry about editing contacts. You don't have to worry about maintaining it, right? Often it's out of date, right? The information is no longer relevant. You might not even recall why you added a person or what you talked to them about, right? Yeah. And so we're essentially taking that on for you, right? We help you manage your contacts automatically. We know it's a big pain, and we do this through all of our products, right? So we We go aggregate them. We do all the heavy lifting for you. You don't have to really worry about it, and we magically just make sure it's up to date. And that way, it's essentially give you that compelling application. The way we, of course, do that for users is, of course, we have a video we make available. We want to make sure the right marketing material supports all of that messaging as well. And then we are starting in our application itself to also do that for you, so that when you first install the app, we actually upsell you, here's what's important to you. Here's what we're actually doing. This is what the application does. And so we're starting to do that as well.
All right. So how do you guys make money off of this? I know there's a pro version, but really, how are you guys making money off of this platform?
Sure. Well, actually, our iPhone client will be free. We actually don't have a pro iPhone product, and so our initial, the new users that will be seeing this product will only see our free product. And so the way we reason, essentially, our approach is to make this app available to you, leverage the information, or feed us your information, and go through the setup flow. We automatically built this robust profile, and then you might realize, well, actually, I'd love this on my Android because I actually use an Android for my work phone, as an example. Or if I'm in my Outlook product, I would like to see that there as well. And so, essentially, the service we provide then is our Xobni subscription service. We do a monthly or an annual fee, and that's essentially how we drive our revenue. So the app itself is free. But if you'd like to take advantage of all the information you have in your app and now make it available in Outlook, make it available in Gmail, make it available in your BlackBerry, make it available on your Android product, essentially, having all these devices connected together, that's where our subscription service comes into play. And
it's a really interesting strategy because the BlackBerry client is free as well, right? And the Android client?
Android's free, BlackBerry's free. We actually have a standalone BlackBerry client as well, but all these endpoints are free. Yeah. And then there are kind of the premium services. The premium service marries them all together.
But I love this approach because a lot of companies are trying to figure out how to turn their app into revenue. But what you guys are doing is it's the cloud application that becomes the subscription. But the feeder is mobile, right? So it complements your strategy very effectively. It's like, get all my contacts in here. Now, look, if you want the same kind of robust contextualized contact information in your Outlook, now that's a subscription fee. But if you don't, that's fine. Just continue using it on your iPhone or your BlackBerry. Exactly. That's an interesting strategy because most people would say, well, listen, it's free for the app, and you get a limited number of contacts that you can use, and you can test it out. But if you want the full service, then we'll charge you $10 a month, and you can have access to it on the website and any other client. So almost the reverse of what you're taking. Was it a hard? Was it a challenge coming up with the way to turn this into revenue, or was it always set?
Well, we've actually been utilizing the freemium model from the get-go, right? Our Outlook product from the get-go was free for our users. They had a lot of functionalities that our pro version had, with the exception of some compelling features, right? And so, as an example, we had auto suggest, which is automatically the Xobni contacts that we would find in Outlook would be available to you when you're about to compile an email. And that would be our upsell. And so there we essentially converted you to a pro product.
I like the calendaring effect, right? Where you went into my calendar and it pulled up when I was available. Yeah. Pretty cool. Exactly.
So there were a lot of pro features that was enough of a reason for users to kind of upgrade.
Yep.
And so we were always started off with a free product. And now we feel like there's enough reasons to want to connect all of your devices together. Obviously, we have other plans as well to kind of release more and more devices and make more and more products available to it. So in the end, it just makes all the more reasons that if you're on another device that might not be a mobile phone or you're another desktop, this should just be available to you. And really what you're then buying is the Smartr cloud, right? The back end that analyzes everything, that looks at your information, and it looks at what we actually call your implicit graph, right? The graph of everybody you communicate with. And now you have all these products available to wherever you need to. And we think that's enough of a reason for somebody to want to purchase a subscription service.
I'm going to assume that by other platforms you're talking about bigger screens, like a tablet-sized screens, but also Windows Phone eventually, right? Like
exactly. Yep.
It's got to be there. And I made a plug kind of under my breath before, but Mac Mail would be the killer application, really. I think beyond a shadow of a doubt. I miss my Xobni, right, because of that. And I can't wait to get it back on my iPhone.
I appreciate that, yes.
Okay, so I'm very interested because, fundamentally, mobile has transformed the context with which you guys are running your business. I mean, it's become a focal point, obviously, because everybody's carrying these. We're not carrying our laptops around with us.
Yep.
Metaphorically, we're carrying the web around with us. So you can, Gmail does that very effectively. But mobile has transformed what Xobni has become, and certainly the business model. But deeper than this is that I think that what you guys are doing is transforming the contact, the simple contact, into context. And gone, I would hope, are those days of the A to Z or A to Z listing of contacts. And because I don't need to see all 10,000 of them when I'm just trying to get that one email. So talk to me about what impact has the mobile industry, or has mobile had on the way we communicate and the way we keep those contacts in context to our situation.
Absolutely. Well, as I think we all recognize, right, the mobile phone is probably the single most is the device that has the single most amount of information that you'd have available. It knows where you are. It knows, it has you call people on it, you text people on it, you interact with a variety of applications, your email is on it. Everything you do, right, there's a lot of information on that. And we recognize there are so many data points we could take advantage of it that you just couldn't take advantage of sitting at a desk, right?
Right.
And so that is very interesting to us, right? So outside of the fact that we built this robust address book, these things can really help you as well, right? And so one of our ultimate visions as well is we can glean, hopefully at some point, a lot of information from your phone to even predict who it is that you want to call. So an example that we use as well is I drive home every day at 7 p.m. I call my wife and say, hey, I'm on my way home, right? The next time I really should be able to pick up my phone and it says, oh, you want to call your wife? And say yes, right? And so these are things that are only possible in a mobile phone. It has location, it has time of day, it has all this information to you, and there are enough patterns that if you repeat them enough, we can take advantage of. And that's, within our Smartr Cloud, we have a lot of analytics, a lot of algorithms that allow us to do that for you. And so this is to us, right, very, very interesting, right? And that's for us why we think there's such a fundamental shift for us at least, to move into the mobile space and to try to do a lot of very interesting things there.
Well, I one of the things that was always part of Xobni that I loved was the analytic piece. So, I mean, you're collecting a lot of data on this with permission, but it's data that I find, I mean, it's fascinating how many emails I'm sending to so many people. And so you crunch that, and from that, I mean, data is more valuable than dollars right now because of the outcome of this. So you leverage that stuff. But then if it's anonymized, right, it's up in the cloud, and you're going to get a kind of a macro view. I'm not saying that you're doing this or not, but of how people are interacting with these devices, and you can create an inference engine that actually does those things.
Yep.
It's pretty amazing.
That's absolutely possible. For us, right, I mean, obviously because we deal with personal communication as well as overall communications, we're very much aware of that, right? I mean, we understand that this is sensitive information, so the information we currently expose is really your own view of your own data set, right? Nobody else can see that stuff, and so it's not available to you in that respect. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can infer from that, right? And if it's generic enough, right, that will help all of our users create a really great experience. And so that is certainly very compelling. And so we hope all these data points that the mobile phone can send to our backend will just continue to build upon that and create a great experience for our users.
All right, I got to ask. Hands-free connectivity, obviously, big thing that we saw at CES. Certainly motion, voice. Something like Siri obviously is a great match for what you guys are doing about taking the data that you're collecting about me, about my social graph, and then voice enabling this so that through a service like Siri or something to that extent. Do you see that is kind of the future where you're going? No hands, all inference and communication, either voice, eyeballs, hands.
Absolutely, right. So the biggest thing that I think we solve, right, is who. The who question, right? Yeah. Who is this person? How do I know them? How do I interact with them, right? And that's something that many companies just haven't yet solved for.
Right.
And so today, right, I'll give this Siri example where you say, call my wife. And Siri says, well, who's your wife, right? So you have to go through that step. Well,
which wife?
Yeah, which wife? Exactly. So we actually know who your wife is, right? Or I could say call mom, right? Like we know mom, right? Because we have enough information to say, well, actually this is mom. Because when you write mom, you say, hello mom or hi mom, right? And so it makes many, many different things possible, right? So if I could simply say, call my wife, we will know at 7 p.m. I'm driving home. It knows I'm calling my home phone number. It knows who my wife is. It knows all this stuff, right? And so that is clearly where we'd like to go as well, right? I think it'd be great. And then you get your magic phone. It knows what you want to do. It even predicts ahead of time what you're about to do, right?
Because I love that. And when you start to add that kind of deep detail into this, where it's where the contact list is gone, where I'm not downloading contacts from, I'm syncing with my desktop. I'm not syncing with Google Contacts or with LinkedIn. It's just here, right?
Yep.
And I long for those days. I can't wait to get my hands onto this product at some point soon. So if you're watching this video, go to the App Store right now and download it for the iPhone. And obviously just look up Xobni, Xobni, and you'll come across the product in the App Store. But it's already available for Android and BlackBerry as well. So you guys out there, don't feel so bad.
Please do try our Gmail, Android, and BlackBerry products. And of course, our Outlook product has been around for a long time. And so we're obviously excited to have our iPhone product as well.
So people obviously find information about you guys, Xobni.com, Xobni.com, inbox spelled backwards. The greatest story that I ever heard about this guy was, certainly the way I found out about you guys. I was using X1 and X1 technology for search, and I found out about Xobni, and that way. And I found out about it because Bill Gates, basically right when you guys launched, Bill Gates talked about the Outlook plugin on stage and kind of launched you guys. And a number of years later, I'm so thrilled that what you guys are doing is focused on the mobile space and a mobile cloud connection, because I think that that this is a problem in mobile devices that needs to be solved, which is this communication piece. And somewhere along the lines, it's what I hope to see is a Xobni-powered cloud back end with like Google goggles and a Siri combination, where I walk up to somebody and through the implant in my behind my ear, it says, hey, this is Michael. He's the VP product management at Xobni. It just kind of feeds it in there. You spoke to him, on this day at this time about this subject, and just make me smarter.
Exactly.
Wow, I love it. Have I missed anything? Is there anything that I should be asking you that I haven't asked?
No, I think you covered a lot of things. I think the one other thing that I think we're also able to do now with our back end is actually showing you who you have in common with a particular individual. And so this is the other use case, right? Which is, God, what was the guy in the meeting that I had with Rob, right? And literally all you need to do is just look up Rob, look at our common contacts, and say, oh, yeah, it was Johnny, that's right. And so again, similar to the implant, you walk up and say, well, you might not know this guy, but you know this guy because you happen to know Rob and they're friends of one another, or you might have actually exchanged an email at one point, right?
That's important.
I think this is great stuff, right? And so we're certainly very excited to continue pushing into the mobile space and making a lot of things possible down the road.
I love it. I don't know if you can tell, I'm a big fan of the product. I love the product. I love the company. And for those of you who haven't tried it, go and give it a try. Especially if you Outlook users, because it was an absolute. Once you get it, you won't look at email the same way, at contacts the same way. You'll never lose those attachments. Trust me, man. Just go and do it. Download it from Xobni.com. That's it. I could probably speak to you a bunch more about this, and I'd love to have you guys back on as you go through this process.
Absolutely.
A quarter from now or 2 quarters from now, when you've launched, the product is out there in the wild, and I'd love to see the lessons you've learned as a result of the feedback that you've received from people using the iOS, and compare across BlackBerry, Android, and iOS. That would be pretty neat.
We'd love to share that, and then at that point we can show you our voice app, maybe.
Nice. Yes. Well, Michael, I really appreciate you coming on and being a part of Untether. Thank you so much. Big fan of Xobni, and all the best going forward.
Thank you so much.
I have been speaking with Michael Albers, who's the VP Product Management at Xobni. Go to Xobni.com, Xobni.com. Just think of inbox spelled backwards. And wherever you guys are, whatever you're doing, whatever it might be, you're driving, you're at the gym, you're trying to fall asleep, I really appreciate the fact that you come back every day and listen to these things. It means quite a bit to me to know that you're out there listening. And I know you find value in these, but please reach out. Let me know. untether@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you about this episode or any other one. If there's somebody you'd like me to interview, to bring onto the show, to do their own episode, if it's you, reach out. Let me know. Let me know. I want to hear from you. But until next time, this has been another episode of untether.tv. Thank you for watching, Michael. Thank you for being a part of this. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care. You too.